Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 19, Chapter 4. And my gosh, things are building up. Things are definitely building up. It's going in a direction that was obviously against my predictions that I gave last Mushoku Monday. But there is some stuff around, especially King Pax, that I think I was pretty on the nose while not entirely on the nose. Like, I still have my suspicions there, and it seems like Reese himself even still has that suspicion. But we'll get into it as we get into it. But as per usual, hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for dropping by for the premiere and everybody that drops by later on for the VOD. Definitely appreciate all the support, all the kind words, everybody that gets me through this whole travel through Mushoku Tensei. It's been a blast so far. And yes, as usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, all that stuff. It means so much to me. Last week we had Joshua with a super, thank you so much. Noah with a massive super. Gearless, as usual, dropping a bomb on everybody. Gearless just coming out of nowhere and dropping the bomb. Really greatly appreciate it. It means so much to me. And yes, Rolls Moist with a super as well. Thank you guys so much. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Chapter 4, King Pax. The next morning, Rudius and Zenoba arrived at the castle gates with some suspicious looks. Zenoba had arrived without his one bodyguard and didn't send word beforehand. After some questioning, they realized Zenoba was an imposter, straightened up their backs, and allowed them passage. Yeah, I can see that because like, what the hell are you? What the hell are you doing here? You can't be Prince Zenoba. What are you talking about? The stiff formality of their movements made it clear the lofty status enjoyed by the royal family. Zenoba was only the brother of the king, but you wouldn't know that by the look on their faces. Though, they could just be on edge. The other royals were purged in a massacre recently. Yeah, I think I could see that being two parts. Like, yeah, you could technically have it by the fact that it's Zenoba, the head-ripping prince. Like, they could be fearful of who he is. But yes, I could see the other side of it as simply, yes, the power of Pax, and if Pax has summoned him, it's a twofold thing. Is one, it's still the brother of Pax, the king, but additionally, yeah, they're like, dude, you're dead. Dude, you're probably dead. After asking for an audience with King Pax, they were ushered to a waiting room. After an hour, they were granted it and promptly escorted to the throne room. 5 people waited for them within the chamber. Pax hadn't changed much in appearance or height. His personality didn't seem to have changed either, leaning back on his throne arrogantly. However, upon further inspection, he looked a bit more mature, and there was a subtle hint of strength in his eyes. Dude's been through stuff. Next to him was a beautiful girl who looked young enough to be a middle schooler. She had slightly curly blue hair and wore a sleek white dress. Wonder why she was chosen. There seems to be more. I have to admit, yes, when I first seen that, I'm like, oh, he found his Roxy replacement, but it at least looks like there's a bit more to it than that, so I can give Pax some credit here. Reese could have almost mistaken her for a Magurdian, but the shade of her hair was notably different from Roxy's. She must have been from a different race. Her eyes were vacant and unfocused. Due to the coronet on her head, she must be Pax's queen. Pax had one arm draped casually behind her. At a glance, it almost looked like an innocent display of affection. But Rudius knew better. He was obviously fondling her butt right now. No subtlety there. Now, this is a sad thing because this is what masterclass Refugian right here, by the way. It's like coming in there, and you have all that preconceived notions about Pax coming into this throne room. And yes, I once again have to say, bad chat for the people that just could not keep their mouth shut up about Pax and how smart he was. Which I would argue at the time, he was not smart. The point was, and I think what people were already kind of spoiling for me, was the fact that, yes, eventually he does go out and get very learned. And that's the difference about the current Pax and the Pax back then that I was tier listing. Again, bad chat. But I think that's kind of cool because despite the spoiler people that wouldn't shut up, back there, Pax was seen as being very dumb, very single-minded, and corrupt in so many ways. And he had this one central focus that he was focused on. Yes, you can argue that he was clever because even at the time he was clever because he was enacting all these tricks to gain power. That doesn't mean that he was smart, it just means that he's clever, which I would distinguish the two of those, because in the end, he screwed up. And the reason that he screwed up in my mind is because he was dumb. He's clever, but he didn't have the intelligence to not screw up as badly as he did. But anyways, that aside, I like that you have that preconceived notion about who Pax is. We come into the situation, Rudius comes in that room, and even Rudius himself is sort of having preconceived notions. The way that he's looking at things is sort of with scrutiny here. And when he sees Pax arrogantly sitting on the throne, yeah, he notes that he has sort of a little bit more maturity in his eyes. And later on, he notes that, like, he has some muscles to himself, like he's been building himself. But because of that preconceived notions, you see this beautiful woman standing next to him, and she's got like vacant eyes and everything, and he's reaching behind her. It's like, okay, so this is some woman that's close to Roxy that he ended up getting, and he's completely just destroyed her mind. That's the assumption that you have. You don't have the knowledge that later on that Pax brings up is that, yes, it seems like there's something that's off about this girl. You just assume that he corrupted her and destroyed her mind. It's kind of cool. We're already getting started. We're not even started on these chapters. I know this is going to be I feel like it's going to be a long recording. Reese didn't have the time to critique his treatment of a random concubine, though. So he shifted his attention to the person at her side. That's where his attention stayed, and he couldn't tear his eyes away. A man who looked to be in his mid-40s. To call him gaunt would be an understatement. His cheekbones seemed likely to push their way through his papery skin at any moment. An eye patch covered one eye. His left eye was sunken deeply into his socket and looked as lifeless as a glass bead. Rudius felt like he was staring at a zombie, or maybe a demonic pirate captain. In other words, this was a man with a skeletal face. So, pretty much confirming, well, it gets more confirmed later on. No doubt, Rudius was face to face with the death god, Randolph Mariane. The two knights flanking the group was probably others dispatched from the King Dragon Realm.
Your Majesty, it is I, Zenoba Sharon. I have returned from the magic city of Shariah in answer to your summons.
Zenoba stepped forward and dropped one knee. It seemed he had no issues bowing before his little brother. Rudius kneeled too, but made sure to keep his Gatling gun hidden under his robe and fixed on Randolph. He's like, you try something. Pax studied Zenoba's face from above before pulling his hand off the consort's behind and licking it. Yep. Same old Pax. Yep. Same old Pax. Like, in front of everybody. It comes with being a king. It's like, who's going to laugh at me? Who's going to criticize me? I could do whatever I want. And if it means licking my hand after touching her butt. Pax is built different. Pax is just built different. You certainly made excellent time. I didn't think about what I was going to do for his voice. I know I joked about doing Kermit, but I don't think I'm going to do Kermit. You certainly made excellent time. You certainly made excellent time.
The matter clearly called for urgency, so I made utmost haste.
Oh, did you now? And here I was, thinking you must have been lurking somewhere inside Sharon in the first place. I never got word that you crossed the borders, you see.
It would normally take a year to get here, but they arrived in a month. It would be natural for Pax to be suspicious.
Indeed, I came under attack repeatedly during my journey, so it seemed wisest to make my way here in disguise.
Even after entering Sharon?
It was then that I grew more cautious.
Ah, I see.
Pax snorted quietly, but seemed to let the subject drop. It was as if he wasn't going to press for an explanation of the quick arrival. Pax then pointed to Rudius with a jerk of his thumb.
And what about your companion here?
His name is Rudius Greyrat, Your Majesty. As you may remember...
I wasn't asking for his name.
What were you asking in that case?
I'd like to know what he's doing here, obviously.
I recruited him to our service in the city of Shariah. He is a powerful mage, so I thought he might prove useful in the coming war.
They had worked out this explanation in advance. Magicians were highly valued weapons in war. Even intermediate or advanced tier mages were effective in creating fortifications, and large-scale attack spells could wipe out an entire legion of troops. In a simple one-on-one duel, swordsmen held the advantage over mage of equal skill. But as the scale of battle grew, so did the importance of magic. In times of war, even the haughtiest of kings will lower themselves to flattery if it meant earning the service of a saint or king tier mage. That is a very good point. I think they bring this up several times before. I mean, it's kind of one of those givens. In a situation where, yeah, it's one-on-one, yeah, with how fast swordsmen are, it's just, boom, they're on them. And yeah, with like the lightning speed they have, cut it you in half. But when it comes to a large-scale war and you have like this distance between yourself, you're able to produce a spell. You have that range given to yourself. And yes, you can wipe out an area. And he's even pointing out like low skill, like intermediate and advanced fortifications. Makes perfect sense. Building up earth walls, creating holes, filling it with water. I mean, the mage could do the work of a swordsman within a second by creating those sort of fortifications or moats or whatever that could create that barrier between you and other forces. I could totally see with what Ruiz has sort of shown with his power. I mean, I'm going to probably bring this up a lot, but the whole battle with Orsted, yeah, him using that against a battlefield is insane. Just putting aside the power and the destruction, put into the idea of just essentially reshaping the landscape. Rudius could essentially create this massive moat around the border or something like that to keep the forces from coming in. Like, I immediately thought of the idea of just create a massive wall. Just build a wall, build a wall on the border, build this fortification so they can't even get into the region. Or just for the area they go to, create some sort of moat or something they can't get in. But again, yeah, makes perfect sense. The idea of this massive group of people coming in, just drop a massive nuke. Just like with Orsted, drop this massive nuke on them. Now, he'll point out later on, there's still the issue that you sort of have to have them come together. Like if the army's spread out, you can't just drop a big nuke on it because they're going to be so spread out and they're wanting to flank that you can't do that. There's still going to be intelligence on the other side. They're not going to make stupid decisions like having everybody group up in a line that's going to walk right into your spell. It makes sense that these kingdoms want mages, badly, which technically plays into what would eventually happen with Asura. The idea that she's going to essentially bring magic to them because they're going to need that eventually for some sort of threat they're going to need magic for. It's something different they bring to the battlefield. Which honestly makes you wonder why a lot of these kingdoms, if mages are so big for battles and stuff like that, why wouldn't they have some sort of system to raise mages? And you could probably argue that it's just that most of these kingdoms don't. I know that a lot of it has to do with Millis, but it's still one of those aspects of like, that's not going to stop them from wanting to create their own mages if it means the future of their kingdom. Why wouldn't they put something in effect to study or at least bring mages into the picture or at least raise them up as mages? Now, yes, a lot of them don't know about the idea of what Rudius knows about and Sylphie knows about the idea of building up their mana early, and a lot of them might not have the potential of it, but it's still, it's kind of odd. But yeah, despite the fact that most kings would actually lower themselves to flattery, Pax responded with a snort. Studying Rudius for a moment, a cold sneer shone on his face before he turned his attention to Zenoba.
Is that so? To be frank, Zenoba, I'd rather assumed you brought him here to kill me.
The moment those words left his mouth, a ripple of hostility came from the other two knights. It seemed the knights, on loan from the King Dragon realm, were relatively loyal to him. Still, the pair didn't seem too dangerous.
Certainly not, your majesty. I haven't the slightest intention of opposing you.
So it doesn't bother you that I seize the throne by force?
I can't say that it does. I pledge my loyalty to Sharon, not its former king.
But I'm sure you don't intend to pledge yourself to me either.
Zenoba said nothing in response, to which Pax let out another snort, looking more bored than anything else. Another man might have interpreted Zenoba's silence for disloyalty, but Pax didn't seem bothered by it. He's like, yeah, that's Zenoba. I think he kind of knows his brother.
Enough of this. To be frank, brother, I don't particularly care what your real intentions are.
Pax gestured his chin to the knights.
Take a look at these gentlemen. These are the elite knights I brought with me back from the King Dragon realm.
The two men bowed deeply, although the death god stifled a yawn.
This man here is particularly fearsome. His name is Randolph Mariane, known as the Death God, ranked 5th amongst the 7 great powers.
Starting slightly at Pax's gesture towards him, starting slightly? I don't know if that's a proper way to use starting. Starting slightly at Pax's gesture towards him. Starting slightly as Pax gestured towards him. Startled slightly? I'm guessing it's supposed to be startled slightly. Startled slightly at Pax gesturing towards him. There's like two things that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I can see it makes sense if it's like him waking up or whatever, starting. I don't know. I've never heard that term. Startled slightly at Pax's gesture towards him, the death god decided to introduce himself. He stepped forward, strained his expression, cleared his throat, and began to speak. This guy is not a guy of few words. I didn't think of a voice for him. Dang it.
A pleasure to make your acquaintance, sirs. I am indeed Randolph Mariane. I was born in the King Dragon realm, but raised in the Demon Continent. I am of mixed race, part human, part elf, and part immortal demon, among other things. I earn my living as a knight, serving in the King Dragon realm's Blackworm Knights, under the command of the High General Shagal Gargantus. Murder is my area of expertise. I can kill quite literally anyone. Although I follow no specific style, I've dabbled in both North God and Water God traditions. I am commonly referred to as the Death God, which leads some to take me for a crazed serial killer. But I assure you that nothing could be further from the truth. I am a gentle soul with a passion for cooking. I do hope we can be friends.
After he rattled off his speech, Randolph offered a half-hearted attempt at a smile before returning to his former place. It really felt like he badly wanted to be somewhere else. I was trying to go with that with the voice. And, murder is my expertise. I can kill quite literally anyone. I just want to cook. But some dumb kid made fun of my cooking. I could really honestly understand why he doesn't recognize Rudius, because again, Rudius was much younger then. But I don't understand why Rudius doesn't recognize him, but I guess he's probably a lot more cleaned up and obviously suited up. But again, that also could be that maybe possibly that chapter wasn't in the original web novel, so he doesn't want that recognition there. Maybe eventually Rudius will realize it. If Edis went with him, she probably recognized him, maybe. I don't know. She probably doesn't care what 2 bits about him back then. Rijerd would. Rijerd would totally recognize him. Because again, I think Rijerd knows him. But no, I didn't think about that. I was bringing up my prediction that at some point Rijerd had met the Death God because he was talking about like how everybody wanted to kind of train under them. And it kind of gave the indication that he knew one of the 7 great powers. And that wouldn't make sense because he didn't recognize him. Neither of them recognized each other when they actually went there to eat. So I guess that breaks my prediction there. But yeah, let's break this down. Let's break down this introduction from Randolph. He was born in the King Dragon realms. Yeah, it kind of insinuated that with the whole Nanahoshi thing, the meat chapter, the idea that this guy came down and was kind of welcoming him back. So it kind of implied the idea that he was there. But yes, to the whole point of what Orsted talked about with Randolph, yes, at some point he ended up in the Demon Continent. It is kind of interesting, kind of wondering what brought him there. I would assume that might be because of his race. That at some point maybe he wanted to see his origins, learn more about his family or something like that. Because yes, as we get into later on, he's mixed race, human, elf, and yes, other things. But yes, and immortal demon. What? What? I mean, Elf is a shocker enough as it is. This dude is mixed is all get. This dude has a lot in him, which I think is going to probably be pretty significant when it comes time to him, Rudius possibly having to face him. And yes, technically answers the question as to why this guy seemingly is as powerful as he is. And maybe he could have been around for a long time. Again, being so parted and obviously questioning how much of each thing he is going to be the question mark there, but simply having things like blood of an immortal demon and elf inside him, he's obviously probably going to be around for a long time. I'm curious if they'll ever get into just how long he's been around. Because I could probably argue that he's been around for, obviously as long as the King Dragon Realm has been around because he was born in the King Dragon Realm. Now, he could have been born in the area of the King Dragon Realm and then the King Dragon Realm being formed, but that's a long period of time. But again, how much of that immortal demon blood is in him that allows him to last for a long time? It could be so little that it's not going to extend his life, but it could. But that also kind of plays into what most of the immortal demons have, which is immortality. So it makes me wonder just how much of him may possibly be immortal, or maybe he might have those advantages, but not maybe all of it. But yeah, that's pretty huge. That little segment right there is pretty huge. I'm curious if they'll ever get into possibly which of the immortal demons is in his lineage. So yeah. But yes, he earned his living as a knight, serving under the King Dragon Realm's Black Worm Knights, under the command of Shagal, of course, which was the guy that actually went and got him. And I think that's pretty much it. He can kill literally anyone, follows no specific style, which again confirms what Orsted said. He dabbled in North God and the Water God traditions. That answers my question earlier, because again, Orsted brought up the idea that he was training under the North God, which yes, obviously got into his tricks that he would use. But then he kind of had a falling out. But yes, saying Water God traditions, that confirms what I was saying. A lot of what he was saying that he can do sort of borrows from both those areas. Mainly the Water God traditions and the idea of counters. And if he did form his own ability, he would need that skill that would come from the Water God style of doing counters. And yes, again, earlier with what his blood is of mixed of, could imply that he had plenty of time to do that. He could have had plenty of time to do that. Which, yeah, I guess that kind of answers that question a little bit, because Orsted did technically imply that Randolph was the grandson of the second North God to hold the title. That doesn't technically imply how long, because you don't know how many North Gods there are and how long that went on for. So I guess it doesn't technically answer any questions there, but that does at least imply some sort of time gap there. But yeah, I do like the fact that it sort of, again, goes and coincides with what Orsted said, and the idea that I can kill anybody, and people think I'm some crazy killer, and I'm going to go out and just serial killing everybody, but I assure you, that's furthest from the truth. I'm a gentle soul with a passion for cooking. I hope we could be friends. So it does imply the guy might be a cool dude. Maybe Rudius will never have to actually fight him, but we'll see.
Quite the character, isn't he? but I encourage you not to underestimate him. He's the one who cut down my brother's finest guards in the blink of an eye and secured me the throne.
It was like Randolph handled the whole thing on his own. Given his place in the Great Powers list, Orsted seemed to think that he lost his edge over the years, but he clearly wasn't a pushover.
How about it, Zenoba? Shall we have him face off against the mage of yours and see which one comes out on top?
So that's how they were going to play it. They had a clear chance for the Death God to kill Rudius now. It seemed like an absurdly simple trap, but that meant nothing. The Man God had never been good at fancy strategies. But again, I still think that Geese is behind us.
Surely you jest, your majesty. It would be hardly advisable to deprive ourselves of a valuable weapon with war on the horizon.
I like that he doesn't say specifically. I think when Zenoba said this, he's literally saying we shouldn't deprive ourselves of a valuable weapon, the Death God, with war on the horizon. Because he says weapon. Not that Rudius and the Death God might injure each other and then they're both out of the picture. No, he's like, you don't want to deprive yourself of the Death God over there with war on the horizon. Rudius is going to kill him. Zenoba has full confidence in Rudius. Rudius noticed beads of sweat forming on Zenoba's brow. Was he actually protecting him? It seemed that way. Pax looked down at his brother with sincere amusement. He clearly took a lot of pleasure in making people flinch and stammer. It brought back memories of Rudius' time as his prisoner. This was the kind of guy who loved reminding you that he had the upper hand. Once he saw the panic across your face, he'd usually back down and insist that he was joking. Know those types. Know those types. But if the Man God was manipulating him, all bets were off. Finding a way to pit him against Randolph would be his top priority. Rudius knew it might come to this. But if he had to fight the Death God, he wanted to do it with Magic Armor version 1. He'd have to trigger a smokescreen, grab Zenoba, and flee to his magic armor. Pax leaned back lazily in his seat.
I was only joking, obviously.
So, they weren't fighting after all. Surprised, Rudius looked at Randolph, who was stifling another yawn. It didn't seem like he was even paying attention. In fact, it seemed like he might be sleep deprived.
I've heard rumors about your Rudius Grey Rat myself. Although aided by the Armored Dragon King, he supposedly defeated both the Water God Rada and the 3 Blades of the North God in the Kingdom of Asura. And Randolph here is a precious asset on loan to me from the King Dragon Realm. I'm sure he wouldn't lose the fight, but if I got him badly injured, I'd be too ashamed to face his majesty.
Paxton repositioned himself on the throne to fix a sharp glare on his brother, abruptly changing the subject. Yeah, that's interesting that he notes the fact that Rudius was aided by the Armored Dragon King in order to take down these foes. But it's funny that, whatever rumors those were that came out to them is completely wrong. It's like the Armored Dragon King, Petagus, did nothing. He did absolutely nothing in that situation besides have a presence. He was there as a presence. Even his familiars didn't pull anything off. They were struck down by Rada. It was just literally Orsted, his presence, and Rudius doing his own part as well. So it's kind of funny that the rumors are completely wrong. Now, yes, technically with the 3 Blades, yes, Rudius and Edis and Ghislaine, they took their part in that. But yes, it is a good point that he makes. I don't really want to look bad to the king because I don't want Randolph here to get injured. He's not going to lose, but he might get injured.
On another note, if I'm not mistaken, brother, you seem to be quite wary of me.
In my defense, your majesty, our last parting wasn't on the best terms.
Ah, yes. I suppose that's true enough. You may rest assured, however, I'm not interested in picking a fight with you after all these years.
Pax repositioned himself, crossing legs, putting an elbow on one knee, and leaning his cheek against his fist. It seemed he was trying to look as arrogant as humanly possible. Or it may come natural to him.
I grant you my forgiveness for your trespasses.
My sincerest thanks, your majesty.
Zenoba bowed his head.
It is far more than I deserve.
Think nothing of it.
Pax wore a smug smile. It was a smile of someone utterly confident of his superiority. No doubt in his mind, he could crush Zenoba if he wanted to, but he generously would decline to do so. He's a magnanimous man. He's a magnanimous man. I'm still stuck on those letters that they sent.
In fact, Zenoba, perhaps I owe you a debt of gratitude. You see, it was an unfortunate incident that provided me a chance to change.
At first, Rudius wasn't sure what change he was referring to. But as he studied him, Rudius realized that he lost a decent amount of weight. His neck was thick, but it looked more muscular than anything. Of course, Rudius gathered that he was talking about something more profound.
I won't deny it. When they shipped me off the King Dragon Realm to serve as a hostage, I wept with anger at all the unfairness of it all. For many days, I bitterly cursed your name and that of Rudius Grey Rat. But then, I changed.
Pax looked to the girl at his side, who turned and met his gaze. They had something in their eyes that looked almost like trust.
I hope you won't mind if I reminisce out loud for a moment.
Pax didn't even wait for a reply before continuing. Rudius didn't mind because he was hoping that he'd blab about his new friend, the Man God.
The story begins some time after my arrival at the King Dragon Realm. Largely ignored by my hosts, I grew increasingly sullen and withdrawn. But then, I met a certain girl. This girl seemed to spend all of her time alone in the gardens, doing nothing in particular, with a melancholy expression on her face. No one spoke to her, and she spoke to no one. When I asked her what she was doing, her reply was, nothing, really.
Pax developed an interest in this strange, quiet girl. He had a habit of speaking to her every day in the gardens. The girl wasn't talkative, but she always replied when he spoke to her. She knew almost nothing of the world, and seemed to take great pleasure in hearing him describe it. Her happiness proved infectious, and Pax began to consciously look for topics of conversation that might interest her. That's interesting. I want to note here, this again, despite earlier, that initial impression of, oh, you know why he chose her. She looks like Roxy, or at least has the blue hair anyways. It seems to imply that my prediction is that she has some sort of mix of Magurdian in her. But right here, it doesn't specifically ever mention he's seen this girl and thought, Roxy. He immediately thought, Roxy. She looks just like Roxy. He doesn't even mention, and it could just be him changing the story itself. He does, and you would think that he would mention it. Like, this is Pax. Again, this guy is full of himself. He's sitting on his throne. He's got the power. He could do whatever he wants. He's literally licking his hand in front of everybody. He doesn't care what people think. So why wouldn't he admit, I seen her, and she looked just like Roxy? No. He's seen this quiet, strange girl, decided to talk to her. She listened to him. He notes earlier, my hosts ignored me. Everybody was ignoring him. He was there as a prisoner, and nobody wanted to pay attention to him. But she listened to him. So it does kind of give that little sense of genuine love developing here. Now, yes, you can get into the whole question mark here of, is she all there? There's obviously that question that is she all there? But that could all just be the assumptions people make because they don't understand somebody that might be a little bit different. And they might be passing judgment on her that she's nuts, that she's cursed, that she's broken somehow. Kind of like Zenoba. The assumption everybody has that Zenoba's crazy and that he's nuts and that he's not normal. And that could be the same thing for her. Maybe they made that judgment on her that she's cursed and that she's broken and discarded her and kept her locked up in here so that nobody sees her. Even mentioning later on the idea of them breeding and creating a bunch of half-wits. That whole thing. It's a really interesting thing that, again, Pax is admitting here. And again, technically this little segment is Rudius summarizing it. But I would assume Rudius would bring that up. Yeah, he's seen this girl and thought, man, it's Roxy, just like the girl that I'm obsessed with. No indication of looks. Just simply, he spoke to her, and she responded to him. She wasn't talkative, but she responded to him. She gave him attention, listened to him. And he took pleasure in giving her these stories. She was locked up. She had no idea about the outside world. He told her about the outside world. She enjoyed it, and it became infectious to him. It actually is showing an actual relationship that's built between the two of them. Again, which is counter to that initial impressions of him walking up and going, this is a random concubine that he's broken her mind. It's actually pretty interesting. The preconceived notions that you can have.
But then, one day, I happened to overhear a bit of palace gossip. Rumor had it that the shame of Sharon had grown close to the half-wit girl.
They were thought as a fitting couple, but there was concerns expressed about the dreadful possibility they might reproduce, filling the palace with children just as worthless as they were. It was a rumor meant to inspire malicious laughter.
In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to cut the heads of those vicious gossips from their shoulders.
In Sharon, it would have been trivially easy to arrange that. Anyone who slandered the royal family, no matter how drunk they might be, would suffer dearly for their mistake.
In the King Dragon Realm, I had no authority, no power.
It was in that moment of bitter, painful frustration he yearned for some way to take revenge. But the only thing he could do was cry bitter tears in his pillow. When those tears stopped coming, he tried to dismiss the words as opinions of fools. But that didn't work. From that day forth, Pax approached his life with newfound diligence and determination. He put his self-indulgent ways behind him forever.
I don't even know myself why I changed so suddenly. But I suppose I wasn't a particularly stupid boy to begin with, and I wanted to prove that there was nothing worthless about me.
Pax was dropped in an unfamiliar environment, met unfamiliar people, experienced unfamiliar feelings, and began to act in unfamiliar ways. Just like that, he turned over a new leaf. Rudius understood exactly what he was talking about, of course. It sounded like his first year in this new world. In any case, Pax began working very hard to improve himself. He threw himself into a study of magic, along with other academics. Apparently, his build limited what he could accomplish with a sword or on the playing field, but he clearly hadn't lived a sedentary lifestyle either. Then, a year and a half ago, Pax participated in a grand academic tournament of sorts and produced results that placed him amongst one of the most promising young scholars of the King Dragon realm, thus catching the eye of the king himself. Yeah, like, I'm getting way... It's like it keeps going. Yeah, I kind of agree with Rudius later on, or maybe it was Roxy that brought it up. Anyways, they bring it up later on, the idea that, yeah, something seems pretty suspicious about the king. And yeah, there is a side of me that at this point, rereading this part, I'm like, yeah, at which point could we possibly see the man god, you know, sticking his fingers into the situation? And yeah, I could totally see this idea of like, okay, yeah, the man god going to the king and saying, hold this tournament, and no matter what Pax does, acknowledge him. Acknowledge for how great he is and offer him anything. And that could be all the man god said, and then fully knowing that possibility of, yeah, technically Pax asking for the bride and then sending him off. So this is kind of that point where it kind of sticks out for me. But yeah, I could totally see this being like this big, massive changing point for Pax, being put somewhere unfamiliar, just like Rudius, and not having anything, but growing out of it for some sort of purpose. Rudius found a purpose. He found a desire to do something different, to no longer be that worthless person, to do things in this new world. Pax had the same thing. He had everything in Sharon, and he was drunk on everything that he had, and he took advantage of people because he could. And in the moment that was stripped from him, and he was thrown somewhere where he had no power, and nobody gave a rat's butt about him, he suddenly found purpose, and that was in this girl. But the thing that grabbed him was that, okay, I found joy in this thing, but now suddenly people are gossiping, and he doesn't like it. He hates it. I can't do anything. Normally I could do something, but I can't right now. I need new purpose. I need power. I need to ignore these things, even though he couldn't. He said it didn't work. He couldn't ignore them. He found a new determination to push and stop being self-indulgent all the time and push himself forward. He pushed for self-improvement, and that's what changed everything for him, until eventually, yes, gaining acknowledgement from the king. The king recognized that despite being sent as a hostage in all but name, Pax was still striving to make a better future for himself, so admirable that his efforts warranted recognition. Pax was summoned to the throne room, where the king offered him many things: gold, appointment, and even to defect from Sharon to become one of his subjects. Pax responded without hesitation. I would have your 18th princess. His beloved's name was Benedict King Dragon, one among many of the king's daughters. Her mother was a demon of unknown origin that the king had employed on a whim and impregnated on another. While Benedict was not on the line of succession, officially she was granted the title of 18th princess. Still, no one treated her as royalty. Quiet and inexpressive by nature, she acquired a reputation as a half-wit. Yet Pax asked for her hand in marriage. The king hesitated briefly before accepting his request. He admitted that he might have denied him if it was one of his other daughters. But Benedict was no great loss. Since she was still a royal princess by name, Pax needed to secure his own position first. The king then proposed that the King Dragon realm should send Pax back to his homeland. Once he had assumed a suitable prestigious office there, Princess Benedict would be sent to join him as his wife. Sharon could offer up another prince to take his place as a hostage. This way, the marriage could be arranged without appearing irregular. However, the kingdom of Sharon politely declined to accept the king's proposal. Pax had caused no end of trouble back at his home in his youth. They likely wanted him to stay in the King Dragon realm for the rest of his life, and they certainly didn't want to hand over one of their other princes in exchange for him. The king was enraged by this reply. The kingdom of Sharon was something very close to a vassal state of the King Dragon realm, and their refusal to obey him would be punished. He loaned Pax his realm's strongest weapon, the death god, Randolph Mariane, along with 9 other knights who seemed amenable to serving Pax, and sent them to launch a coup d'etat. Again, Rudius sort of acknowledges this as well, which kind of coincides with me, but it's like, that seems like a bit of a reaction. Again, looking through this and really trying to examine where the man god could come into the picture, that seems like a bit excessive. Now, the oddity here really is, okay, he says, I want Benedict. I want to marry her. And he's like, yeah, if it was any of the other daughters, any of the princesses, and again, that's a lot of princesses. We're saying this is the 18th one, so he's got a lot of princesses here. He wouldn't like that. Again, this is Pax. He's acknowledging Pax, but Pax doesn't have any power. He can't marry a princess of the kingdom off to a random hostage in his kingdom. That would be irregular. No, these princesses are supposed to be sent off as sort of political chess pieces to people of power. That's what they, yes, you would say unfortunately, that's what they use the females for. That's their role, is to create bonds between kingdoms. They are chess pieces that they send out there to acquire something, to gain, some sort of bond with another nation as a way of creating peace. That's basically what they're used for. And to just give them off to what everybody deems as this worthless hostage in their kingdom from Ch4-5, this deadweight, is odd. Even though he acknowledges that he has a future. He shows potential. Despite his circumstances, he's doing such a great job of building himself up for a future. You still got to do something for me. You have to gain a position. So I'm going to send you back to Ch4-5. You're going to go over there, you're going to get a good position, and then we'll work things out there. I'll send her after you've gained a good position. The oddity here is he wanted them to send somebody back. Why? I thought Ch4-5 sent Pax to be there as pretty much a hostage. Why would the King Dragon Realm need somebody else? We need you to send me another one replacing him. No. The point was to be sent there because they wanted to kind of get rid of him from Ch4-5. Why would the King Dragon Realm go, no, I need somebody to come back and replace him. You sent him to me as a hostage. We want somebody else. Who cares? Like, that's the oddity that's really in there. And yes, this technically does sort of confirm something that I didn't really realize, that yes, how much Ch4-5 is a vassal state to. I think it may have mentioned that in the past. I may have just forgotten it or whatever, but that does sort of go against my theory of the King Dragon Realm being behind the scenes to take over. It could still be. Again, especially if the man god's involved, he would put something into play to break it once it happened. Like the king could be thinking, okay, yeah, I'm sending him off, and I'm going to send in my daughter, I'm going to fulfill this thing that I did with him, plus I'm going to get back at Ch4-5 for not listening to me. This guy will listen to me. I have my daughter with him as well. That'll create this strong bond between the two of them. But there could be other people in play that will cause something to happen there. And they still even kind of indicate it later on, the idea that Ginger is still staying behind in Ch4-5. Something is happening in that town. And that could be this other thing that I think the man god, through probably Geese, is sort of brewing that could involve the King Dragon Realm, but maybe the king doesn't know about it. But yeah, it's all kind of odd here. Very interesting. And again, it could technically be the king sent Pax there to take it over by the words from the man god, but additionally, the man god may have also told him, but we're not going to let him keep it. We're going to send him to take it down, but we're not going to let him keep it. We're going to still take control. We're going to get rid of that family. Just get rid of that family. Get him out of the picture, and we'll replace him. And I think that might be what Ginger's looking into. But yeah, that is interesting that they point out her mother was a demon of unknown origin, employed by the king on a whim and impregnated on another whim. An unknown origin demon. I mean, obviously, since they're saying that her hair is blue, that it is a good possibility that it is a Midgard. Like the idea that maybe he employed a Midgard to be there and impregnated her. It doesn't say if the I don't remember if it says anywhere later on that the mother is still there. Just the idea that he employed her, got her pregnant, and now he's got this 18th daughter, and she's kind of a little bit off. I kind of wonder if it's a possibility that this king, which I'm surprised they haven't named him yet. I am very surprised they have not named him yet. Obviously, he's King Dragon. Like the King Dragon Realm, his name is supposed to be King Dragon, I'm guessing. It kind of makes me wonder if possibly he has traveled at some point, or maybe before he took over the kingdom or built the kingdom. Maybe he was traveling around. Because there is the first thing that popped in my head was a long time ago, somebody traveled. They mentioned that somebody had traveled through the Midgard village, and I think that was the one that inspired Roxy. I might be misremembering that, but I think Roxy mentioned that an adventurer came through the village, talked about his stories, and that was sort of inspired her to go travel. And I'm wondering if he employed a Midgardian at that point or brought one with him at that point. So it might be possibly somebody from their tribe in the past. And that could be that it was him that was there. Or it could be, yeah, he found out about one at some point. It doesn't seem like Midgards are like commonality around the rest of the world outside of the Demon Continent. So it sort of makes me wonder that he might have gone there and acquired her rather than her just being randomly over here. So much in here. I'm actually even jumping back and forth with, like, oh crap, I forgot about talking about this too. Where the hell were we at in this list? Where were we at in the outline, dang it? By arranging the slaughter of the Chiron's royal family, he had seated Pax on the kingdom's blood-stained throne. And so, it all simply fell into my lap. I have my rank, my prestige, and the woman I love, and the finest underling any king could ask for. Pax wrapped his arm around the girl beside him and glanced meaningfully at the death god. A blush spread across the girl's expressionless face, and Randolph simply shrugged. Again, that does imply right there that she's blushing to him, so she's not, like, out of her mind. And again, it kind of implies the idea that she had joy from his stories and she's responding to it. Again, it kind of implies the idea that she is not, maybe possibly not all being there, but that she's there, at least. And she likes being with him, at least. And again, that could possibly be because both of them were sort of in the same position. They were both seen as worthless in society in that palace, and they found each other. They found purpose in each other, which is technically very sweet. I don't like the guy, but it seems at least it's showing some sort of sign that he's got some good in there. Pax ended up rambling off his entire life story, but he didn't say a single word about the man god. Reese assumed his guidance to the throne had a few convenient prophecies involved. He could have just jumped to conclusions, but his transformations sound a little fishy. Still, the single most suspicious character in the story was definitely the king of the King Dragon realm. He popped up out of nowhere and offered Pax a huge reward, then flipped out on an allied kingdom over something that seemed incredibly minor. It would make sense if he was acting on the advice of the man god. Again, I agree with that. I think that's a bit much. Then again, Reese thought that they could both be disciples. Do you understand now, Zenoba? At this point, I don't have any reason to resent you.
I do indeed. A most impressive tale, your majesty. I'm overcome with admiration.
Zenoba bowed his head, seemingly overwhelmed with emotion.
But I do wonder, given that you have the finest knights at your disposal, why did you feel the need to recall me to Chiron?
I think it should be obvious. To be sure, Randolph could deal with his invasion easily enough, but while he is my underling for now, he is a knight of King Dragon, and in time I must return him to his king. What would his majesty think to learn that I was incapable of defending my own borders without relying on a borrowed blade?
He had a point, as ridiculous as it sounded. The only reason that he had the throne was because he impressed the king. If he wanted to stay there, he had to keep doing that. I agree. It makes sense, even though he's relying on somebody else. But that's the point of the king. They were supposed to rely on their own assets, not other people's assets.
A man like me must prove his usefulness continuously. Surely you could see that. In any case, Zenoba, I believe I explained myself sufficiently. You may suspect I called you here to take my revenge, but that simply isn't true. The situation is exactly as I described in your summons. My coup has left our armies weakened, and the Northerners wish to take advantage. Under such circumstances, I need warriors like you. We have to put our past behind us. All I would ask now is that you serve me well. Pax jerked his chin down slightly. The movement could hardly be called a bow, but it seemed like a gesture in that general direction. It was odd that he stopped himself from calling Zenoba brother. Perhaps it was more kingly to pretend that you weren't related to your own family? I don't really have a conclusion there. I mean, yeah, I can see it being an idea of not speaking informally in front of somebody that is supposed to be below you, or it could be a thing of him distancing himself. I don't know.
But of course, your majesty, it was for this very purpose that I was kept alive all these years.
Do you truly mean that, brother? I am an usurper who took this throne by force. Does that not bother you in the slightest?
He was obviously testing Zenoba, since he had massacred all of his siblings. Pax didn't hold a grudge against Zenoba anymore, but that didn't mean the feeling was mutual. Zenoba looked up at Pax and hesitated for a moment. Watching his brother struggle to find an answer, Pax jerked his chin upward to a more imposing angle.
You may speak freely.
This was an important moment. Zenoba's answer could determine if they would be fighting right here. Randolph looked completely disinterested in everything taking place around him, but no doubt he would spring into action with ferocious speed at a single word from Pax. Roos prepared himself for action.
Whoever holds the throne of Chiron, and however they might rule, the fact remains that my life's purpose is to protect the kingdom from our enemies.
Things went silent. Zenoba hadn't answered the question directly, but his implied message was clear. He'd obey the new king's orders and not move against him. Pax frowned slightly, perhaps uncertain what to make of this. Was Zenoba an ally or an enemy in the making?
Well, it's all the same in the end.
Pax then raised his voice.
Zenoba Chiron, I order you to organize the defense of Fort Curran. Your troops have already been deployed there. Take up your post as a commander and hold back the invaders from the north.
Yes, your majesty.
There you have it. sending off to war. It was against my predictions. Yes, my prediction was that they were not going to be going to war, not actually going to war. And it seems like that's going to actually happen. After the conversation with the king, the two of them were shown to their room for the night. Zenoba's own bedroom no longer existed, so they stayed in the guest room in the second floor. One of the King Dragon Realm's knights was posted outside, presumably due to Pax's lurking suspicions. Rudius wanted to explain the situation to Roxy, but they were under surveillance at the moment. After sitting down on the sofa, they caught their breath. Yeah, that sucks, because when we find out later on, Roxy literally is... It makes sense. Again, the plan was Rudius and Zenoba go in there, have an audience, and if things go south, Rudius grabs Zenoba, rushes outside, Roxy helps them flee the area, he gets his armor, and they fight. So, that means they got ushered into this room and they're being surveillanced. And Roxy's out there the entire time waiting. Poor Roxy's literally waiting to find out if she's ready. She's battle ready. Like, okay, any minute now, Rudius could be running by and we have to go. We have to go now. And so she literally stays up all night while Rudius and Zenoba are stuck in a room. I feel so bad. I mean, they had to have known there's a possibility nothing would have happened, but she had to be ready.
Well, that was something of a surprise. Pax seems to be a worthy king.
Zenoba's voice was the same as ever, but there was a hint of happiness on his face. I think there is a side of this that's like, oh good. He seems to be okay. Like, he's not a bad... I mean, he killed my entire family, but as a king, he feels he's worthy. Like, this is a person that is seeking, like he says in a minute, seeks to protect his people, or at least protect his kingdom at least. Not that he cares about his people, that he cares about the kingdom. And that's enough for Zenoba because he just wants the kingdom to be secured. You think?
Understanding that the kingdom of Sarone should be protected by its people, he asked me for my help despite our personal differences. A most admirable attitude, wouldn't you agree?
Rudius felt Pax was more demanding help than asking nicely.
I know that you are quite concerned about his intentions, Master Rudius, but people do change, and they do make mistakes.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Pax's method may be violent, and his tactics sometimes incorrect, but I believe he's doing his very best he can for the kingdom.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm not going to give him that much credit. Nothing about what Pax did was because he wanted to take control, or because he wanted the kingdom to be happy. He did it because he wanted his bride, and he wanted power because of what he went through. No, it doesn't technically indicate that I wanted to take Sharon because I hated the people in the kingdom, King Dragon Realm. Now, there is a side of me that was sort of speaking in there when I was going through that segment that makes me wonder, is at some point Pax going to want to attack the King Dragon Realm because he wants those people still dead? But there could be a thing where at some point Pax goes, okay, I've secured this place. It's strong. I built it up. Can I ask you one more favor? Sure. What's your question, Pax? What do you want from me? I gave you my daughter already, but you did a good job. What else do you want? I want that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy. I want them in a carriage, locked up. We're going home. It depends on who it was. It depends on who it was that he would be okay with that. Maybe it was like servants or whatever walking around. It sort of implied it was people that had some power because he had no power to go against them. But again, he didn't have any power at all. So makes you wonder if he'll eventually get his revenge in that regard. But again, it does imply here, with this whole scenario, he's sort of leaving the past as is. With the whole situation with Zenoba, he's saying that he's left it in the past. I don't care about that anymore. My focus is this thing right now. And that could be the same situation with those people. I don't care. They were mocking me and her. I don't care anymore. He seems like he's grown up and matured in that regard. Again, at face value, he's saying that. He could be thinking something completely different. But again, why would he care about telling people the truth? In his position, he could be more than happy with telling everybody, yeah, one of these days I want to kill those. I want to kill all of them. He wouldn't hold back from saying that. So I do think he's actually being truthful there. Rudius couldn't deny Zenoba's thoughts. Pax really had changed for the better, at least to some degree. He was trying to move things in the right direction, but his intentions weren't the only thing to worry about, or even the most important thing. Okay, but what if we do if he's being manipulated by someone? Like, I don't know, an evil god. While he was trying to keep it light, Zenoba answered with a serious expression.
You refer to your own sworn enemy, I presume?
Huh? Did I tell you about this?
I was at the table when you discussed it with Sir Cliff. At the time, I rather thought that you had made up the whole thing. However, once I witnessed Horsted's curse weakening under the effects of Sir Cliff's magical implement. I realized the truth in what you said, that you and he were allied against a most malicious foe.
That was news to Rudius. But if Zenoba had figured this much out, it couldn't hurt to tell him the rest. He was mixed up in all this after all. Alright, I guess I should tell you the whole story then.
My thanks, Master Rudius.
Rudius gave him a detailed summary of his history with the Man God, covering all the past encounters and his current concerns, making it clear there was a chance that Pax was currently under his direct control.
I see. However, Pax never so much mentioned the Man God in this tale. Perhaps there's no connection whatsoever.
This god manipulated me for years, Zenoba. He's slippery. There's no telling what strings he might pull from behind the scenes. Even if Pax wasn't a disciple, someone close to him might be, like the Death God, or Benedict. Currently, Rudius was suspicious about the king of the King Dragon Realm. Since the Man God can control up to 3 disciples at once, it was safe to assume that one of them was positioned in Sharon.
Ah yes, he deceived you into doing battle with Orsted, correct?
That's right.
And now, you're concerned that he might deceive Pax into coming for your life.
Zenoba cupped his chin into one hand thoughtfully, before murmuring,
I suppose I'll have to protect him in that case.
Sorry? Does that mean you're gonna fight for him if it comes to that? Against me?
What? No. I would never raise my hand against you, Master. You're hardly a threat to Pax in any case. You were instructed to spare his life, weren't you?
Yeah, but you said...
I mean, I would protect him from the Man God naturally.
Zenoba startled him for a minute. The last thing he wanted was for Zenoba to change sides. It was still odd hearing him talk about protecting his brother. It does technically come up later, I believe. I'm starting to think that Zenoba has some mingling with the Man God. I mean, I know Orsted said no. Well, no, he didn't say it ain't no way, but he does imply the idea that because Zenoba doesn't really have much impact in the future, that he is unlikely that it was Zenoba that would be a disciple of the Man God. He says, he deceived you by making you do battle with Orsted, correct? That's right. And now you're concerned that he might deceive Pax into coming for your life. So the point here is the Man God made you fight Orsted. And now you're concerned that he's sending Pax to come after your life. I suppose I'll have to protect him in that case. Have to protect Pax? That seems odd. He's saying, oh, no, not you, because Orsted, told you not to hurt him. I'm talking about protect him from the Man God. Is that simply the idea of, based on the previous points of this conversation, that the Man God is a manipulator and that the Man God wants Rudius dead, that he's assuming that maybe the Man God will come for Pax's life as well, and thus he needs to protect Pax from the Man God? Or is it simply that based on some point, he talked to the Man God, and the Man God told Zenoba, you need to go and help your brother out, go to Sharon, assist your brother, take care of him, protect him. If you protect Pax, you will protect your precious kingdom. Everything right now is starting to add up to the idea that I think Zenoba is being manipulated by the Man God. I think I'm going to put that not like at the higher tier of my list of probabilities here, but pretty dang high. I think the king, if not the king of the King Dragon Realm, but again, maybe Geese is working with the king. Maybe he knows the king of the King Dragon Realm and he's advising him directly, which I think even later on, Rudius had mentioned the idea that it might not even be the king, but somebody like a general or something like that. I think it might possibly be Geese, and he's talking to the king. He's helping him and pushing him towards this thing. But I think pretty high on that list of possibilities for disciples, I think it's going to be Zenoba. The reason why I think that is because while Zenoba is doing a good job of explaining why he's making all these decisions and he's getting excited and he's getting on all this stuff, there is a side of me that is almost wondering if there is a little bit of a push from the Man God. But again, the question I think I keep pushing back on myself for is why doesn't he say anything about the Man God? Zenoba of anybody I can see blurting out, the Man God told me. Yes, there's still that side of the whole situation where the Man God is a manipulator and that he has, and again, they were kind of talking about this sort of charm that he placed on people. There's a possibility that he has told him, do not say my name. Do not mention my involvement. Do not, just do these things. I advise you to do these things, but don't say. And it sucks because there's almost a side of me that I'm fearful, and I don't think Refugin would do this. It does sort of have me a little bit fearful, the idea that at some point Zenoba just breaks out and goes, I've been fooling you all along. I'm not this stupid person that y'all think I am. I'm not simple-minded. I'm actually incredibly intelligent. I've just been putting on this facade for all these years. I would hate that. I would hate if Fujin did that. That is such a dumb, weak storytelling bit that I don't expect Refugin to ever do. But so again, because I don't think he would do that, and because I don't think Zenoba would be, I guess, able to keep it under wraps this long, I don't want to say that he's ever met the man god, but there is a side of me that was almost making me wonder if he's charmed in a way, and he's being sort of manipulated to not mention that he is involved. But it's because it's just there's so many things that happen that sort of put a big question mark as to why is Zenoba acting this way? Why is he so excited about this? Why is he so for this? Why is he so passionate about this? But he's came up with good answers so far. With everything, he's come up with good answers. Why are you so smart about strategy? I used to fight in wars. Why are you so excited about this? Because every young person's excited about this. Why would you do this? Because this. He's giving good answers. He's giving very shockingly good answers that make sense to Zenoba's mind. But there is a side of me that's wondering, everything sort of is lining up right now that I think, of anything, Zenoba. And I hate that. I hate that, because that's flagging things bad. Ugh. Now, the biggest argument that I had in my mind about it possibly being Zenoba, and what the man god could do to manipulate Zenoba, is that simply the man god is before Zenoba. Says, hey there. Zenoba's like,
Where? What's this? You look like a statue. Come here, let me hug you.
I can still have this mental image of Zenoba just jumping on the man god because he looks like a sculpture, at least in the anime. He just jumps him and starts going crazy on him. Anyways, he pops up before Zenoba and simply says, if you want to impress your master, if you want to repay your master for all the things you've done for you, if you want to do good by your master, Rudius, go to war. And that technically explains a lot. Because Zenoba would be like, this is my chance to show Rudius that I can do this. Because he's going to say, and Rudius is going to go with you, and allow him to go with you, which would explain why he's so quickly, sure, all right. He didn't even bat an eye to Rudius wanting to go along with him. And yes, he says later on that he would have stopped me. But that would explain why Zenoba's acting the way he is. This is my chance to prove to Master I am great. This is my chance to prove to Master that I am incredible. I have finally my chance to show him I'm not just an idiot and that I'm a waste of space. Because we've had several points, at least 2 times that I can recall off the top of my head, where Zenoba says, please don't let me be the sum of my money. Please let me help you more than I have. Please let me prove to you that I am worth more than my money and worth more than my strength, that I can do this stuff. So I can see that being a great way for the man god to manipulate Zenoba into doing all this. Prove to Rudius that you're incredible. You know, Zenoba, I didn't actually think you cared about what happened to Pax. Zenoba looked at Rudius with a blank expression before dropping his chin back onto his hand to ponder.
I suppose I didn't, up until today. After all, I hadn't even seen the man for many years. But now that I think about it, this might be the first time he's ever turned to me for help like that.
His face gave way to a cheerful smile. It was weird. He had to know that Pax was using him, right? He'd never been the kind of guy to take pride in his dependability before. Well, maybe some of his determination to protect Chiron was carried over to its king. They were relatively similar goals, after all. That does technically make sense. If his whole goal is to protect Chiron, the king is Chiron, in a way. It's king. If it has no king, it falls apart. So you technically have to do both. But I think there is a side of this. Like he says right there, this may be the first time he's ever turned to me for help like that. He's almost bringing it up very personal. Like he's turning it personal here. So there is a side of me that thinks that like Zenoba in general for a lot of this stuff, and I think it does answer a lot of this stuff, I think a lot of this whole situation is a realization that Zenoba had, and he has changed over the many years being around Rudius and all them. Zenoba has said, I met you guys, Rudius, Cliff, Nanahoshi. I've met you guys and you changed me. It made him think about things around him. And I think the whole situation or his time with them has sort of changed his mind into realizing the idea of the fact that he was spared for the sake that one day he protects Chiron, that he was given all these niceties and he wants to repay that. I think everything is sort of a culmination in that regard. So I do think a lot of this situation between him and Pax is a little personal. Whereas before he was in Chiron, he probably wasn't even acknowledging that Pax was alive. Now he sees Pax as a person. and wants to aid him alongside Chiron. In any case, Rudius was having trouble guessing the man god's plans this time. It wasn't clear who any of his disciples were, and there was no signs of anyone trying to kill him. He felt like he was missing something. It was possible this trap was a mere figment of Orsted's imagination, but Rudius couldn't afford to be optimistic about that. Most likely, there was a trap here, and it wasn't discovered yet. The possible dangers was basically infinite, so it wouldn't be productive to consider them one by one. Regardless, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. Convincing Zenoba to come back home was clearly going to be a challenge. Pax wasn't threatening him in any way at the moment. If he asked Zenoba to stay permanently in a key military position, it was hard to imagine him refusing. Yeah, that kind of comes to the other issue. It's like not even just the idea that Pax might want to kill him afterwards, but the bigger issue is if he asked him to stay, which I think I brought that up last time. So long as his life wasn't in danger, he'd essentially move back home to take a job. While Pax would probably overwork him, Zenoba had the right to choose his own employer as he pleased. Still, Pax could change his attitude eventually and try to dispose of Zenoba. At the moment, they had no evidence he was planning anything, but it didn't rule out the possibility. It wouldn't do too much good to have the suspicions confirmed after his friend was murdered, so Rudius wanted to find some sign of Pax's real intentions in advance. On top of that, even if Pax had no interest in harming Zenoba right now, he could change his mind at any moment. Right now, they had nothing solid to go off of. Rudius had to search for evidence that might not even exist and may go bald from the stress. In the end, he resolved to ask Roxy for her thoughts the next day. And that is Chapter 4. Chapter 5, Fort Karen. Charon? Karen? Fort Karen is full of Karens. Charon sounds better. The next morning, Rudius went to the inn to pick up Roxy, while Zenoba stayed at the palace to make preparations for the journey. Roxy was in the waiting room, fully equipped and ready for action. From the look of things, she must have been awake all night, but when Rudius walked in the door, she jumped to her feet and ran to him. Is everything all right? I was a little worried not to hear from you. That's the other problem, is like, it's not just the fact that she was waiting out there, ready for action whenever he came out the door and said, we're fleeing or whatever. Like, again, she was going to be a part of their fleeing if something happened. But additionally, because he never came out, there's a good chance that he's dead. Like, the side of this, that the entire I didn't even think about that as well. The entire time Rudius and them were in there and under surveillance, she's outside literally going, is he even alive right now? And because I would expect that either he comes out and says, hey, everything went well, or he comes out saying, let's get the hell out of here. So it could be a chance that he was dead. Now I kind of feel really bad. Roxy's sitting there thinking that he's dead the whole time. Surprised she didn't go start nuking things and rushing in there. That's the other big surprise, that she actually stayed there. I think it would have been a better option if they brought one of those communication rings so that she at least has a signal that things went well. Yeah, it actually went fine. She hadn't eaten breakfast, so they had a quick meal as he described their audience with Pax. He made sure to describe every detail that had caught his attention. His 3 main takeaways was, Pax was an unlikely disciple. The man god's plans were unclear, and the king of the King Dragon realm was a potential enemy. Roxy sipped her soup as he rambled on, listening in silence. When he asked her for her thoughts, she frowned thoughtfully. To be honest, Rudy, I'm a bit sleep deprived at the moment. Ah, right, sorry. There was bags on her eyes, and she moved sluggishly. An all-nighter wouldn't usually leave her exhausted, but she braced herself for a battle the whole time. Plus, she had been on the road an entire day before, a combination that would wear out even an experienced adventurer. With no battle, Pax being rational, and the man god not being brought up, she admitted there wasn't much to work out, a firm conclusion either. It wasn't surprising to Rudius. Clever as she was, they didn't have much information. It's a shame that we were so worried about an ambush. I should have come along as well. Why? Rudius wondered if his summary was too vague or something. I might have picked up on something from the tone of Prince Pax's voice, or perhaps his body language. That was true. Rudius spent most of the audience worrying about the death god, as well as the possibility that they were in mortal danger. The conversation kept going off in directions that he hadn't expected, leaving him totally disoriented. Maybe they needed another pair of eyes in that room. Roxy would bring her own unique perspective, but there wasn't much they could do about that now. Yeah, that does make you kind of wonder. I think they did mention the idea that it was just going to be them two going to the audience, but I kind of expected that it would probably bring Roxy with them. But I think my issue there is that if they did bring Roxy in there and Pax did see her, there's a side of me that would think that that would cause a whole nother problem, because Pax was already on the defensive the moment that Rudius came in there with Zenoba. Again, he assumed he brought Rudius to kill him, and he knew who Rudius was. Like, this wasn't like a big question mark of who this person in this room is. He knew who Rudius was. He knew, and that's another one of those things that, like, brings up the massive question mark of, yeah, did somebody tell you Rudius was coming? Or did somebody mention, in proxy from the man god that Rudius was coming? Or, yes, maybe he does recognize him. I doubt that, but there's a possibility. But yeah, when they came in there, that was hostile. And to now have not just the idea that thinking that Rudius was brought here to kill him, but now bringing in the person that he's obsessed with, who is now married to Rudius, who is in the room it might possibly come to kill him. Tensions are going to be even higher in that regard. And what's to say that even though he has this newfound love, that he doesn't go back to his initial fling that he wanted so badly, his initial obsession that he had? I don't think so. I think he might be able to. I don't know, Roxy's super cute. I don't know that he'd be able to resist throwing aside this. Ouch. But yeah, I think her being in that room, she may have been able to pick up on something, because she was with him for quite a while. So she might be able to find something that seems off. I wish we had some idea where the man god is planning to set up his trap. Maybe Orsted read too much into things. It's possible the man god isn't behind this, Maybe so, but let's plan for the worst. The safety of our whole family might be on the line here. The memory of Lotta's screaming fit disturbed Rudius even now. The man god might not be involved, but some other danger might be waiting for them. He's actually going to still keep on that might have been some sort of bad omen. You're right. My apologies. That comment wasn't very helpful. Roxy ducked her head slightly, then paused with a thoughtful expression. Either way, attacking you the moment that we showed up in Sharon would hardly qualify as a trap. Assuming there is one, it'll probably be a bit less obvious now. Okay, but do you have any idea what it might look like? One possibility does come to mind, given some information that Ginger shared with me earlier this morning. Oh? At present, it seems that only 500 soldiers are stationed at Fort Coron. For the look of things, they will be facing an army of 5,000. They were outnumbered 10 to 1? That didn't sound like reasonable odds. Did Pax mention any of this yesterday? Nope. Now, I'm only repeating what Ginger told me, but it seems that Prince Pax has deployed this token force to Fort Coron to delay the enemy's advance. This will buy him enough time to gather an army of mercenaries behind the front lines at Fort Rikon, which he can then lead into the field. Did he mention the strategy in your audience? No. This was the first time Rudius heard any of this. So they were planning to let Fort Coron fall? For all his talk about welcoming Zenobia back, Pax was sending him to die. Zenobia would contribute to the war efforts by keeping the enemy occupied before his death. In the meantime, Pax would gather his own strength for a heavy counterstrike. Assuming he views Zenobia as a threat, he'd be killing two birds with one stone. Yeah, I can see that being the case, but it's like, there's a side of me that with this whole situation, it's like, Zenobia getting there that fast is odd. Like, again, they got it should have took them like a year. And everything starts to kind of play out as if they expected him to get there that quickly. That sort of makes me kind of wonder if, again, there is sort of some conversations happening behind the scene with the man god to at least somehow to Pax. Maybe not directly, but somehow to Pax. He's going to show up very quickly because the man god knows he's going to use teleportation. So it's one of those things of like, yep, they showed up in time just like planned. Just like we were told. Because otherwise, how would any of this play out the way it does if Zenobia came here by himself? Again, it would have taken him a long time to get down there, and all the stuff that's going down would have happened without him. Yes, technically, whether Zenobia is there or not at the fort, it could still be an aspect of keeping them busy while they gain up their forces. That part doesn't change, but there is almost an expectation that Zenobia would actually be there. This could also be the man god's trap for you. What do you mean? I've never been to war myself, but I've read historical accounts describing a single saint tier mage holding back 1,000 men in battle. The idea of fighting off 1,000 soldiers sounded absurd at first, but given the wide range effects of saintly magic, it wasn't impossible. I'm a king tier mage, and you're an imperial level. With the two of us defending Fort Coron, we should be able to resist the enemy for quite some time. It was hard to see them wiping out an army of 5,000 at once. If they charged at them across an open field in a glut, a few well-placed spells might work. Again, that's what I was thinking about. Like, if they were all like bunched up and he just drops down that massive nuke, that would be easy. But this army would do plenty of intelligence gathering before they made their move. And Rudius had the feeling that news of their arrival at the fort would disseminate quickly. The enemy wouldn't be stupid enough to attack the fort head on. They might also have a decent number of mages themselves. With combined efforts, it was possible they could ward off a saint tier spell or two. Rudius could always cast another one immediately, so that approach might not work out well for them. Unfortunately, our supply of mana isn't infinite, and will grow fatigued in time. Rudius couldn't picture himself running out of mana in this scenario, but he could get worn out if they had to fight for days on end. They might launch night raids, so they would have to be on high alert all the time. His mana wouldn't be much use if he was too exhausted to use it. Once we're both worn out, Pax could send the Death God after us. I don't think we stand a chance in that condition. What do you think? Sounds more like a proper chap, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, for sure. Additionally, pausing for dramatic effect, Roxy jabbed her spoon out like a finger. At some point, she had switched into Professor Roxy mode. The man god could possess 3 disciples at any given time, correct?
That's right. Now, the king of the King Dragon Realm basically forced Pax onto his throne, so it's safe to assume that he's one of them. But consider this. How could the man god be sure that a rival kingdom would immediately invade Ch4-5? Where would you place your second disciple in his shoes? Of course, the rival kingdom. Ch4-5 was basically a vassal state to the King Dragon Realm. That made invading carried a real risk. So it would have been significant opposition to that plan. The disciple would have to be there to crush that opposition, ensuring the invasion went forward. Odds were high it was some member of the royal family, or maybe an influential general. That is interesting, because I think when I read that, it did kind of click in my mind of the idea of, originally when Zenoba was informed of this whole situation, Pax came in there, launched a coup, took it over, killed all the royalty, banished some people, cleared things out, and now Ch4-5's weak, and now they're getting invaded. That doesn't make any sense. Especially since Pax sort of described that when he came in there, the Death God went around and just killed everybody. I don't see them weakening their forces that much from a coup like that. Here comes Pax. He's got his 10 soldiers at his side, and they walk up in there, and they talk to the boss, talk to the king, and then bam, the Death God goes crazy, starts killing people. And then it essentially kept mostly to the royalty, the bloodline, but again also says that they banished some people as well. How would that weaken them so much that somebody would suddenly decide to invade? That doesn't make any sense. It does make more sense, the idea that, oh, they're taking action now because somebody up there is pushing them to. It does still kind of make me wonder why the King Dragon Realm wouldn't get involved more so. But again, that goes to the idea that suddenly the invasion's happening and Pax doesn't want to call to the King Dragon Realm. He wants to handle it himself. So that does all start to click things into place. It suddenly all starts making sense. That why he wouldn't ask the King Dragon Realm for help, why would this other kingdom suddenly decide that it wants to invade, and why would Ch4-5 suddenly be weakened? It shouldn't technically be that weakened. It's that somebody is pushing something to an effect, and Pax can't handle it, but he's trying to because he wants to prove himself. But it being a vassal state, it does make me very much so question why the King Dragon Realm wouldn't jump into action anyways. I guess it really depends on what they see as a vassal state and how much important that is to them, because in a lot of cases, having a vassal state being attacked is almost like somebody attacking you as well. It's basically spitting on your shoes. So yes, it kind of is hitting on that point here when he's basically saying, that takes some massive cojones. Like, somebody would have to push them because you're doing something that carries a lot of risk. So somebody has to basically tell them, we're doing it. Any opposition comes out, no, we're doing it. How else are you going to get people to do something that seems like it has way too much risk? So they march at Fort Karan on the man god's orders, wear us down for a while, then wait for Randolph to come finish the job. Yeah, I guess that would make sense. Hearing Roxy's speculation helped him pull his thoughts together somewhat. They identified 2 likely disciples of the man god, the king of the King Dragon Realm, and some powerful general in the country that was invading. That left only one more. Yeah, this kind of makes me wonder. It's like, okay, there was a side of me that's going, oh crap, that means like, eventually we're going to be going down to the King Dragon Realm, we're going to have to fight the king there. Nope, that's right, Orsted's already there. So it does make me wonder, at some point, Rudius is going to finish up this whole situation. He's going to go back home, and then here comes Orsted comes in, and he's like, all right, so what happened over there? Yeah, this happened, we found, this disciple, we killed them. Everything came out good, we're back home. Hopefully Zenobus is still alive, and hopefully Roxy's okay. So, what happened with you, Orsted?
I killed their king. Their place is in shambles. I got him good.
Totally could see that. But yeah, my current predictions right now is Geese, which is working with the king of the King Dragon Realm. I would probably, there's a side of me that kind of thinks Zenoba is going to be involved somehow, but I'm very mixed on that. I want to say that possibly the Death God, but there's something that's kind of pushing against me. Again, it kind of goes back to the whole thing that happened with Asura. At some point, they did kind of hit heavy on the idea that it's not necessarily who you think it is, but somebody that can manipulate them. Don't go for the obvious, but go to somebody that might prod them in that direction. And so it could be simply that all it takes is somebody manipulating somebody of power, like the king of the King Dragon Realm, and then him manipulating the Death God. It's kind of like this chain reaction that can cause, rather than going for one single person that can only do so much. And yeah, they make some really good points about the Northern Kingdom, but again, that could easily be Geese going up there and spreading some word up there. But it would have to be some really good connections that would be able to push somebody to do something so bold. Maybe simply having somebody nudge them to invade wouldn't be enough. It might take actually somebody being controlled by the man god, manipulating directly. During the events of Ashura, the man god chose Luke for his proximity to Rudius. Based on that, Zenoba seemed the most likely third candidate. Judging from his conversations yesterday, though, it was hard to imagine that he had the man god whispering in his ear. I think opposite. I do really think opposite. But again, I think that third that Rudius hasn't mentioned yet, again, is going to be Geese. So going with Rudius's speculation here, it would be probably somebody of that other country, the king of the King Dragon Realm, and Geese. But again, I think there might be a connection here between them. Maybe it was Ginger or the Death God? That would be more consistent of his choice for Rada back in Ashura. It can even be that quiet little princess at Pax's side. On the other hand, the man god hadn't employed all three of his disciples at once since the clash at Ashura. I read this wrong when I went through the first time. I'm like, I read it as he hasn't employed all three of his disciples at once, even in his clash in Ashura. And I'm like, wait, no what? Maybe his final pawn was somebody somewhere else entirely, prepping for some unrelated scheme. Finally, he's starting to like elude the idea of some of that Geese. But again, he did technically talk about this in the previous volume, and the idea that we keep finding two, but never the third. But no, Ginger I don't see. What would Ginger be able to do to manipulate things? But again, she keeps disappearing. She keeps talking about how she got to look into something suspicious. But what power would she have to manipulate things? That's the question mark. But again, neither did Luke. I can see it being the Death God, but that seems a little bit too obvious. There was plenty of reasonable possibilities, so Rudius couldn't draw a firm conclusion on the third disciple. But at least they've more or less pinned down the other two. That is more than he could have managed on his own. Good thing he had a clever wife to help him out. Okay, Roxy, let's say you're right. Fort Karan is where they want to kill us. What should we do about it? Good question. I suppose we want to avoid doing what they expected. Right, I guess the best option would not go there in the first place. Unfortunately, Zenoba had every intention of marching right up to his duty. There was no chance they could talk him out of it. Still, Pax sitting in there, outnumbered, may help with his attempts to change his mind. Maybe Pax didn't hate Zenoba enough to try murdering him, but he clearly wouldn't mind seeing him die. He was trying to use his own brother as a sacrificial pawn. It wasn't enough to convince him. He felt some obligation to protect his kingdom. With Sharon's enemy on the border, running away was the last thing on his mind. However, if they managed to take out an army of 5,000, he might reconsider. Sharon would no longer be any danger, and Zenoba's duty would be done. I think we have to go to Fort Karan, Roxy. It's our only chance to save Zenoba. Very well then. Too bad we're only walking right into a trap. Roxy nodded with a grimace. It wasn't clear what they could do about that possibility. Rudius would have to bring his magic armor version 1, at the very least. Maybe he could find a way to smash through his problems with brute force. That would certainly be easiest. Well, we have some time to think about it before we get there. Let's consider our options carefully. Yes, Miss Roxy. As they wrapped up the conversation, Zenoba arrived at the inn in a carriage. Zenoba didn't even flinch when he was told about how small his garrison would be. In fact, he nodded and said it sounded about right. His nonchalant attitude struck Rudius as bizarre. Did he even understand the concept of being massively outnumbered? Okay, Zenoba, listen carefully, because I have some words of wisdom to share. If you outnumber the opponent 10 to 1, surround them 5 to 1, attack 2 to 1, divide. If equally outmatched, you can offer battle. If slightly outnumbered, you can avoid the enemy. And if greatly outnumbered, you must flee. Thus, obstinacy in a smaller force guarantees its capture. Got all that? Basically, it means war is all about the numbers. The guy with the bigger army always has the upper hand. After the explanation, Zenoba stared at Rudius, puzzled.
Master Rudius, I'm well aware that a large army will generally defeat a smaller one.
Great, okay. Why do you look so damn cheerful then? We're going to be outnumbered 10 to 1 at that fort.
Huh? What? Don't be absurd. It won't be nearly as bad as that.
Were you not listening to me, Zenoba? We have 500 soldiers at Fort Karan, and the enemy is going to send 5,000. 500 times 10 is 5,000. With me so far? I'm being like super snarky with Rudius' voice right now. 500 times 10 is 5,000. With me?
Are you attempting to test me, Master Rudius? Very well. Allow me to elaborate. Your figure fails to account for the presence of yourself and Miss Roxy. A Saint-Tier magician can be worth 1,000 soldiers in the field when they are properly utilized. By that reckoning, we have the strength of 2,500 men at minimum. But given that you're both King Tier or higher, it might be fairer to say that we have an equivalent to 3,000 men or more. The usual rule of thumb is that the besieging force should outnumber the defenders of a fort 3 to 1. But Fort Karan occupies a particularly strong defensive position, so they will require an even greater numeric advantage. Finally, there's the matter of your enormous mana capacity and my status as a blessed child. All in all, one might argue that we possess the stronger force.
Damn. Damn. Zenoba just like,
Dropping in the mic.
Rudius was at a loss for words. He hadn't expected anything like that from him. Very impressive, Zenoba. Where did you learn all that?
I received an extensive education in military matters as a child. They planned to make me a general of Sharon, you see.
He was kept alive for the sole purpose of defending the kingdom, but that didn't mean that they planned to carelessly toss him into battle. Even if his main role was to thrash around, he needed to have a degree of tactical knowledge. Reese felt like he underestimated the education standards of Sharon's royal family. Yeah, he keeps critiquing, like, Pax and Zenoba and stuff.
I understand this is your first real war, Master Rudius, but fear not. I have a fair bit of battlefield experience from my days in my youth. With you and Roxy at my disposal, I should be capable of holding this fort indefinitely.
That's a good point there. I don't think they ever actually mentioned him going out the battle. I know that, again, they wanted to send him to the front line, but I don't know if they actually mentioned him actually fighting. He sounded confident. But was it really going to be that easy? Reese doubted it and felt the best option was to void the fort entirely. Okay, Zenoba, but Pax assigned you to Fort Karan without even knowing about Roxy, right?
Yes, I suppose that's true.
And I don't think he knows that I have an unusually large mana supply either.
What are you getting at, Master Rudius?
It seems to me like Pax is sending you out there to die. Zenoba stared at Rudius with an expression of a man who'd been pinched. Maybe Pax doesn't want revenge on you anymore, but I don't think he cares one bit if you get killed either.
I suppose you might be right, yes.
Zenoba scratched his cheek with one finger. Do you really need to obey the orders of a king like that? Zenoba smiled at the question, almost as if to say, oh, that's all. Yeah, like there's a side of this, it kind of makes me wonder if this sort of deflated Zenoba a little bit in his respect for Pax. Like, yeah, not knowing that, Pax may be sending me on a suicide mission despite me sort of propping him up for a little bit there. Like, oh yeah, he's actually a good king. He cares about his people. And then this might deflate it a little bit in the idea of, oh, well, he still is willing to send somebody to death. But I don't know. I don't know that, again, I don't think he cares that much about what Pax is doing. He just cares about his mission. Pax sent me to protect this. It is for the goal of protecting Sharon, and I have full confidence in what we're equipped with. I don't care what he knows I have. I just know that I can pull it off. In the end, yeah, whether or not it's a suicide mission or not, the goal is to hold back people, whether or not it's involving his brother or not. The goal of that mission at the fort is to hold them off for a little bit until they can gather forces. Whether or not a king's, I mean, even Zenoba gets into it, that sacrifices are often necessary. They're going to do that. If it means the better good of the people, they're going to do that.
In war, sacrifices are often necessary. It's the common soldiers who are usually offered up first. But at times, even the lives of princes must be used as a tactical resource.
Look, Pax made this mess, and now he wants you to die so he can wriggle out of it. He murdered the rest of your family, Zenoba. I don't see why you have an obligation to fight for him.
As you're always telling me, Master Rudius, it doesn't matter who caused the problem. The only thing that matters is who can fix it.
I'm just like, damn it, stop using my own words against me. Stop using my own words against me, damn it. Zenoba's gaze drifted to the window. On the streets outside, ordinary townfolks came and went, mingling with mercenaries. They were going about their ordinary lives for now, but there was tension and fear in the way that they held themselves. When they left Shariah, Zenoba made it clear that fighting the enemy of his kingdom was his purpose in life. To him, it simply didn't matter that Pax was a king, much less what Pax thought of him. Nothing Rudius could say could possibly change his mind now. All right, you win. Sorry for badgering like that.
No need for apologies. I understand that you only spoke out of concern for my safety.
Since you feel so strongly about it, let's defend Fort Karan together. I'm a total amateur at war, so I'll do whatever you tell me out there. Order me around to your heart's content. The last thing that Rudius wanted was Zenoba heading out alone. He tried to make it clear that he was ready to cooperate, despite his misgivings.
My thanks, Master Rudius. Your company alone will be worth 100 men.
Thought it was more like 1,000. They'd defend Fort Karan from their enemies. Pax would gather his own army while they held them off. There was a chance the invasion would collapse completely if they succeeded. Over time, Sharon would grow stronger and more stable. Once the danger had passed, Zenoba might be more willing to return to Shariah. Riz could convince him that Pax and his allies in the King Dragon realm had things under control. Zenoba, Roxy, and Rudius would be the ones heading to the fort. Ginger would be staying behind at the royal capital. She looked a bit conflicted when she heard that Zenoba was departing for the front lines, but ultimately decided that she'd be more useful continuing her investigation in Latakia. It seemed like there were still a few things that she wanted to look into there. Before departing, Ginger told Rudius, in no uncertain terms, that his job was to keep the prince safe. Again, she's staying behind to look into this. What is she investigating that's so important there? And it's like, that's what keeps kind of jumping out at me. Is Ginger's looking into something. Ginger's looking into something. Something's off in there. And it's like, that's the thing that keeps kind of bugging me, is that something is going to happen there while they're doing all this stuff. And again, to my previous predictions, I think that is the man god has something else planned there to destroy Chiron, even with this whole thing going on. So, like, primary focus is to get Rudius killed with this whole situation, but he still doesn't want Pax on that throne. Again, that's still something that the man god wants to get rid of. Again, the whole idea was that it might be that he's bringing Pax in the picture and allowing him to regain Chiron because his greater goal is to stop Rudius because Rudius is a threat to him. But I think he's probably putting something into effect that will still keep that place to fall apart. And again, I don't think that's the man god thinking of that. I think it's Geese. So he talked to Geese saying, hey, I need to get rid of Rudius. Okay, yeah, I can probably bring him in there to handle that, but that's gonna cause another issue for me. And Geese is like, don't worry about that. I'll put something into play that once we get that taken care of, Chiron's gonna fall no matter what. Despite Zenoba's status as a royal prince, the departure wasn't exactly ceremonious. No send-off, no guards, no troops behind them. It really did seem like Pax was sending him off to die, and Rudius couldn't help but feel angry. Zenoba had risked everything to rush back here and defend his homeland, kneeling obediently at Pax's feet and sworn to fight with all of his strength. He didn't deserve this kind of treatment. They arranged to have a magic armor version 1 transported to Fort Caron in parts. Under the pretense that they were part of Zenoba's figurine collection, odds were that they would arrive a few days after they did. He was concerned that something might happen before its arrival. The thought worried him so much that he considered putting it on and taking it himself. But then he remembered his battle with Orsted. The thing drained so much mana that he nearly died. He wanted to preserve his mana as much as possible, so he could use the magic armor when he really needed it. No major roads led to Fort Caron. Most of the journey was down narrow dirt trails through farmlands. They passed some small village on the way, but nothing you could call a town. Some nights they even slept out in the open. Rudius spent most of the time on the first stretch speculating about the man god's plan. But at some point, it suddenly sunk in that they were heading off to war. The thought instantly made him queasy with anxiety. War. Even just repeating the word in his mind made his muscles tense up. He'd grown fairly used to killing in these years since his arrival in this world. But the concept of war frightened him in a way he found it difficult to describe. It wasn't the thought of killing their enemies or getting killed that scared him. It was war as a whole, as a phenomenon. He probably always felt this way, but the fear felt as 100 times more real now that he was heading into battle. That's actually a very curious little bit there. He doesn't fear killing people. He's gotten used to the idea of killing people in his years since he arrived in this world. He's gotten over that idea. And he's not afraid of somebody killing him. The fear is the concept of war itself as a phenomenon. The concept of, I guess, greater scale battle. Tons of people killing each other. It's interesting that he doesn't get into specifics. Is it the idea of the massive loss of life? Is the idea of many people killing many people over somebody else's thing? I think that's probably what it is. Because typically what the difference here in, okay, killing or not, or being killed, it's not that aspect, but the concept of this mass scale and what's the oddity there. Yes, it's the numeric value, but it's typically that somebody else is orchestrating it. The idea that somebody else that's not even on the front line, that's not even down there, is causing large groups of people to kill each other. That's what upsets him. But it causing him to have anxiety and not being able to let it go does make me more think it's the idea of the scale of it against him. There's so many variables, I can't control any of it. The idea of going to war against a lot of people is starting to weigh down upon him. And even the aspect of, yes, how outnumbered they are is weighing down upon him. So I think it is an aspect of probably the variables of numeric value. Having so many targets that you have to think about. Could they even win this fight? Zenoba's arguments had convinced him that they wouldn't be completely outmatched, but the fact remained that it would be his first time on the battlefield.
Look over there, Master Rudius. It's a band of adventurers. If I'm not mistaken, I wonder what they're doing out there in the middle of nowhere with all that gear.
In contrast to Rudius' growing anxiety, Zenoba seemed to be enjoying himself greatly. Anytime he spotted something along the road, he loudly pointed out with a grin. The man was so damn chipper. You would think that they were on the road to an amusement park. Yeah, when I was reading this part right here, I started getting like, oh gosh, this is actually pushing me more and more into thinking that Zenoba is manipulated in some way, because why is he so chipper? Okay, maybe it's that he's kind of trying to ease his own tensions. Even Roxy easing her own tensions that are going on right now. Rudius feeling like he's the only one that feels anxiety when they all feel it, or they all put on a front. A lot of question marks start popping in my head. It looks like a party on the way to explore a labyrinth. There are quite a few in this region, but not all of them are located near a town. Parties with serious interest in reaching the bottom floors will often head out to more remote,
less crowded options. Roxy seemed perfectly calm as well. She wasn't as cheerful as Zenoba, but her demeanor was the same as ever. This would also be her first experience with war, but that didn't seem to bother her in the slightest.
Aha, I should have known you'd have an answer ready for us, Miss Roxy.
Well, I spent some time poking around in labyrinths here myself, you know. Reese felt he was the only one hung up on the situation. He didn't understand how the two of them could be so relaxed. Was he missing something? Was there some reason they shouldn't be worried? Maybe they figured that he could handle everything that came at them. He couldn't exactly let them realize how terrified he was right now. Yeah, that was the other side of it. It ends up turning into, I think, when they do get there and he lays it out, it's like, oh yeah, Zenoba just totally has it figured out. Like, he knows what he's doing. But yes, I can also see it being a thing of them going, well, Rudeus is incredible. He's always been incredible. He could probably nuke the whole place. He fought the dragon god and survived. There could be an expectation there.
Come to think of it, I recall you earned your appointment as a court magician by completing several labyrinths single-handedly.
That's right. Goodness, it feels like ages ago.
They say it's no small feat to challenge a labyrinth without any companions. Perhaps such boldness is expected from the master of my master. But tell me, why risk your life and limb in such a manner?
Huh? Well, you might say I was looking for something. I guess it was all quite childish, really.
I see. Did you find what you were searching for?
Not back then. Later, yes. But it was more like it found me, really. Roxy shot a few bashful glances in Rudeus' direction, beneath the brim of her hat. She did say that she was looking for romance in those labyrinths.
Ah, now I see. So the rumors of the blue-haired master mage hunting for a husband in our labyrinths were true.
I was being vague for a reason. Thank you very much. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it feels to remember this?
Surely there's no cause for you to blush. Why, it seems Master Rudeus was pining for you from afar for many years, even before he enrolled at the university.
Was he, really? I thought he only had eyes for Sylvie back then.
Oh, far from it. I only learned about this later, but throughout his years of travel, it seems he carried something of your...
Now the two of them are reminiscing about their good old days for some reason. Under normal circumstances, this would be when he'd feel a twitch of jealousy. But right now, he couldn't even muster the energy to keep listening. But that was a perfect time for you to jump in. He just lets it happen. You tell him about the Ponzu. Goodness, really? He carried those around for all that... Rudy, is something the matter? Roxy had leaned over to study Reese's face close up. He had an impulse to snatch a kiss, but decided against it. Not really, just trying to think about how cheerful Zenoba seems, considering we're heading off to war. Zenoba laughed.
Well, I am a typical young man in some respects, Master Rudeus. The mere thought of battlefields and deadly duels is enough to make my heart pound.
That made Reese's stomach hurt. 9 days on the road, they arrived at Fort Karan. It turned out to be more impressive than he imagined. From a distance, it looked like a typical stone castle, with unremarkable design. But then he realized how well positioned it was. For one, it stood nestled in a fork of two rivers, just like a famous castle Toyotomi Hideyoshi built in a single night. For another, the area around the rivers was covered in dark, thick forest. It would be simple enough to enter the kingdom of Sharon by traveling through the woods, but leading an army through a place like that would be very risky. Forests were infested with monsters after all. As your forces struggled along, any nearby enemy can march around and meet you on the far side and pincer you with the monsters. It was a strategic stronghold for a reason. As they drew closer, it seemed to grow progressively more solid and intimidating. The watchtowers and catapults were positioned along its ramparts. He expected something smaller after hearing it only had 500 men, but this was definitely a proper fortress. On the other hand, the soldiers manning it all bore gloomy expressions. Morale was clearly an issue at the moment. They must have all learned how badly they were outnumbered.
Master Rudeus, Miss Roxy, this way, please.
They stayed a few steps behind Zenoba and made their way through the fort to the chamber of the commanding officer. They found him in what looked to be a war room, studying a large map on a table with captains. Who are you supposed to be?
I am Zenoba Sharon, third prince of Sharon.
After the officer sized up Zenoba dubiously, they fell to their knees. I'm Garrick Baberty of the Sharon Royal Knights, Your Highness, commander of Fort Karan Garrison.
My thanks for your efforts to this point, Sir Garrick. The king sent word of my coming, I presume?
Yes, Your Highness. A messenger arrived several days ago.
Good. No need for further explanations then. As tomorrow, I will assume formal command of this fort. Is that understood?
Yes, Your Highness. Garrick didn't seem too pleased about this development. Losing command was one thing, but handing it over to some pompous prince was another. He probably took real pride in the fact that he defended this fort up until now. Rudeus was afraid he'd hold a grudge.
However, it's been some time since my last foray into battle. I prefer to play the role of something like an adjutant, leaving the actual command of our forces in your hands. Do you accept?
Yes, Your Highness. Zenoba seemed to be ahead of Rudeus on that. It sounded like a good call to leave it to the veterans.
In that case, Sir Garrick, let us get to work at once. I wish to bolster all troops' morale. Would you gather the entire garrison for me?
At once, Your Highness. Zenoba's first order set the fort into a flurry of activity. 1 hour later, some 400 armored troops stood in rows before a platform outside the fort. Of the remaining 50, 10 were in lookout towers, watching for the enemy. The rest were largely out scouting or securing provisions. The troops were muscular and imposing, with rugged faces of seasoned warriors. The boldness in their eyes caught Rudius by surprise. This was much more impressive than he expected. He thought of 500 men as a tiny army, but it hardly seemed that way when they were before you. It felt like they had all the troops they needed. Still, the enemy forces were 10 times greater. Yeah, it's like now you see the scale of it. It's like, holy crap, that's a lot of people. But now think of that 10 times. It's still different. But again, I think because their position and everything and what he kind of lays out, yeah, it does technically make sense why Zenoba has so much confidence right now.
Hey, get a load of him. Who the hell is that? Looks like some kind of prince, maybe?
The troops studied Zenoba as he stepped onto the platform. Morale was low across the board, some troops whispering amongst each other, despite faced with royalty.
I am Zenoba Sharon, 3rd Prince of the Kingdom of Sharon.
Welcome, Prince Zenoba. We are honored to have the opportunity to fight alongside you. It was all lip service. He was obviously not happy about having Zenoba there.
My thanks.
Zenoba scanned the troops. He looked relatively imposing, thanks to his armor and the club.
Now then, your report on our current situation, Commander Biberti.
Sir, at present, contact with the enemy has been limited to small-scale skirmishes. However, interrogation of our prisoners has confirmed they will launch a major offensive.
I see. It seems we have no time to waste then.
Again, this kind of makes me believe that there was knowledge that they were going to get there quickly, because it seems like everything is sort of falling into play that Zenoba had to be there fast. The commander looked a little worried. He probably couldn't tell how well Zenoba understood the situation. Zenoba then drew himself to full height and raised his voice to a bellow.
First of all, troops, allow me to introduce our reinforcements.
It seemed the troops' faces brightened. It was nice that their morale was rising. But reinforcements? Pax didn't send any. Zenoba looked back to Rudius and Roxy, signaling them with his eyes. The two of them stepped forward, a little startled. It's like, who the hell we... It's one of those moments of like, duh, Rudius. You are the reinforcements.
Hey, isn't that... I've seen that face before, but I thought...
The troops murmured, many looking specifically at Roxy. With so few women here, they must be licking their chops at the sight of her. She was adorable and beautiful and divine embodiment of all goodness. So Rudius could understand the reaction. Still, the females in the group were staring as intently as the males. Again, this is another one of those moments like, they know who she is, but yes, she's also adorable.
Our numbers are few. Our enemies legion. Their offensive will come soon. Perhaps it seems like all is lost and our position hopeless. But fear not, for I bring you formidable reinforcements from the magic city of Shiraya.
Zenoba looked back again and winked. So yeah, they were the reinforcements. It made sense. If the two of them were supposed to be 1,000 troops apiece. Hello, everyone. Roxy took off her hat, and the murmuring began to grow louder.
I knew it. He's the one that used to be the court mage. Didn't she reach King tier? She developed all theories behind their drills, right?
Zenoba grinned from ear to ear.
This woman is Roxy McGurdia, a former court magician of our own kingdom. I imagine many of you recognize her name, as it was she who essentially created our current anti-magic program. She's accompanied by our star disciple, Rudius Greyrat. Both have reached the king tier in their art.
Sounds of surprise and admiration rippled through the crowd. A bit belated, Rudius realized what was going on here. Roxy had been a prominent figure in Sharon for some time. As a mage employed directly by the royal family, some of the soldiers must have recognized her. That said, Rudius wasn't too pleased about Zenoba calling her Roxy McGurdia. She was Roxy M. Greyrat. These days, thank you very much. Yeah, he probably used the name that they would recognize, but still, it's like, yeah, the reason, dude.
Troops, I'm sure you've heard it is said that a satyr mage is worth 1,000 men in battle. Now consider the value of a king of magic. Perhaps some of you have never heard this tale, but in the Laplace's War of old, a single king tier mage once pushed back an army of 10,000.
Zenoba paused, savoring the startled silence of his audience. Rudius never heard this tale himself, and it sounded like a load of crap, frankly. The figure of 10,000 had to be an exaggeration, right? More than a few soldiers seemed to be buying it, though. They had a hint of awe in the way they looked up. It makes sense, because, again, Saint tier does technically get into, like, wide area range effects. But again, what happened when they went to King tier, at least with, like, water magic? It was all about doing that same thing with a longer incantation, and then, like, just making it more magnified, pouring more mana into it, making it larger and more impactful. So it makes sense that you're essentially going from just a wide range effect here to now more powerful wide range effect. And yes, because in a war, you have that distance and that time, or people keeping people busy, you can do more damage.
In addition to these two mighty mages, I offer my strength as well. Perhaps some of you are familiar with a blessed child known as the Head-Ripping Prince. I am he, and I shall lead you from the vanguard.
The soldier's eyes lit up at the words blessed child and the nickname. On first visit to Sharon, Reese heard people speak about the prince with a revulsion in their voices. In the context of war, the same moniker sounded almost reassuring.
I promise you this, and this alone, you shall have victory.
Zenoba balled his outstretched hand into a fist, and his voice rang across the crowd. His soldiers answered in kind, punching their fists into the air. They roared their approval in unison. It seemed fair to say morale had improved somewhat. Rudius had to admit, the man had a talent for getting people fired up. Strange as it might sound, maybe Zenoba had the makings of a leader. Then again, the troops had a nice solid fort to hold up in, and two powerful mages to defend it. Charging out to crush the enemy might not work out too well, but defending should be simple. You can understand why Zenoba seemed so confident, and why so many were looking at Roxy as they cheered. Looking out at all those upraised fists, Reus felt his own anxiety lessening somewhat. Reus thanked them in thought. He'd do what he could. And that is chapter 5. That is quite a build up, I think this is like these last, this entire beginning of this volume and the very end of last volume is like this whole change in how I see Zenoba, how others see Zenoba, but how I personally see Zenoba. Just so much cool insight into him as a character, standing up there, standing strong, being confident. Again, I still have my prediction the man god told him to do this to impress Rudius, but again, he has laid out solid reasoning for everything he's done, and I don't see that being something that the man god has set up for him or at least manipulate him to do. So it doesn't really necessarily mean that I really kind of subscribe to that, but it's kind of a high possibility there. But good stuff. I almost thought that I was going to be able to get into chapter 6, but holy crap, this has turned out to be an extremely long recording. And it's not like I'm doing bad, so I think this might actually be a long Mushoku Monday, but we'll see. Going into chapter 6 preparations and onward, things are going to start getting crazy, and I'm looking forward to it, sort of. I don't want bad things to happen to the characters I love, but it is exciting. It's exciting, but scary at the same time. I'm like Rudius. It's like, yeah, I think we got this. But then at the same time, I'm a little bit concerned. I still have my anxiety there, but we'll see how it goes from here. But I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for dropping by for this premiere. I'm looking forward to you guys dropping by next week for the next Mushoku Monday. As per usual, greatly appreciate you guys' support, all the kind words. You guys mean so much to me. The chat, it was super bad last week, but I'm hoping this week you guys were doing better. I know I've made a lot of predictions, so I'm afraid that some of y'all might start chattering. The mods are going to have to slap y'all. But yeah, as per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, all that stuff. Anybody that has donated for this particular Mushoku Monday, thank you so much. I'll get you guys by name next week. But with all that said, I think that's everything. Until the next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care. Ruius need to. I'm Garrick Baberty. I'm Garrick Baberty.
They say it's no smell.
Keep going.
We're doing it.